Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Morning Quest. Big thanks to everybody who's turning up for the first episode, especially those of you who are here live. Let's give some shout outs to the early birds. We got Treehouse, SL White, Sid Lexia, Star Latte, Lance the Master, Usagian, Didaki, Falcone, Will's Word, Oscar. Man, I can't thank all of you enough for showing up. Again, I found that gamers didn't really have a morning show. Not a lot of people are live in the morning. And, you know, while I absolutely love the Landy Lodge podcast, you know, a lot of those discussions are centered around a handful of topics, a handful of franchises. So I wanted to create something that allows us to talk about things a little bit more broadly. But again, let's not stand on ceremony here. We got some gaming news that we got to get to. We've got Nomura on the table today. We've got a new Reynatis trailer to go over. We've got a Tekken trailer to go over. We've got news from Capcom. We hear from the director of Dragon Quest. There's a lot going on today. So without further ado, allow us to get started here. Let's pull up this first article. Give me 1 second. I think this ought to do it. Perfect. Square Enix's Tetsuya Nomura has a huge stock of game proposals lying dormant. By the way, guys, please let me know how the volumes are. I want to make sure you can hear me. Want to make sure the music in the back isn't too overbearing. Anyway, Square Enix's Tetsuya Nomura has a huge stock of game proposals lying dormant. I know there's a lot of people in this chat and who follow me who would love to get a little peek as to what Nomura is cooking behind the scenes. This came from an interview, one that we're actually going to peek at later with Famitsu, where he sat down with the director of Reynatis to talk about a few things, most notably that the Reynatis director, obviously, is very heavily inspired by Tetsuya Nomura. I mean, you could see that in the artwork, you could see that in the approach to the cinematics of Reynatis. Anyway, we'll get into that when we watch the trailer in just a little bit. But here's the real kicker right here. When asked about the volume of potential game projects he has, Nomura notes that while his stock is being rapidly depleted, I assume that means the FF7 trilogy, Neo: The World Ends With You, and, you know, the ever, how do you put it? The ever evasive Kingdom Hearts 4 and Missing Link. But anyway, he says he still has a huge number of game proposals lying dormant, full scenarios included. On the other hand, he jokes that his folders are subdivided into a labyrinth so complex that he wonders if some of the proposals will ever see the light of day. So, in my opinion, guys, and again, this is opinion that I'm standing on here, I think Verum Rex is one of those titles that he's referencing that's kind of that he's sitting on, proposals he's sitting on. I remember we went over some interviews a couple years ago where at the end of Kingdom Hearts 3, they were at a crossroads of should they make Verum Rex, should they make Kingdom Hearts 4? Nomura concluded since so many people were so eager to see how Sora's story was going to continue and resolve that they went with Kingdom Hearts 4. But I believe, you know, if we take what he was saying a couple years back and combine it with what he's saying here, Verum Rex has to be one of the titles lying dormant. We'll go over something a little bit later where I actually think it's possible a World Ends With You title might be involved in there. But for all we know, there could be a lot of new IPs. There could be a proposal for Final Fantasy 17, Final Fantasy 18. I mean, I still think Nomura deserves to have a numbered Final Fantasy where he can run the show. You know, he's always working on a team with Creative Studio 1, formerly Creative Business Unit 1. And, you know, he's always working in tandem with others. I really would like to see him get a hold of a Final Fantasy in the way that he has a hold on Kingdom Hearts. But that's a conversation for another day. Now, before we move on, because I definitely want to get into Reynatis, I want to watch this launch trailer that just dropped, because Reynatis has released in Japan, but won't be coming to the West until the fall. But let's talk a little bit about Capcom. Oop, you know what? This is why I have two overlays for this. Boom. Let's talk a little bit about Capcom. So Capcom recently had a shareholders meeting, and what we have pulled up here is transcript from said meeting. Let's go down to... Here we go. Question. The ratio of physical game sales is decreasing as end user needs for digital is increasing. What is your outlook on physical games and the company's policy regarding this? The response is, given that a significant number of end users demand physical games, we currently do not expect to eliminate physical products. So again, this is something we've talked about in passing on the podcast, a little bit more detail on Twitter, but you know, everybody sees which way the game industry is trending. You know, things are getting more digital, and as things increasingly get more and more digital, you know, people like myself and some of you in the audience, we're wondering where we fall in. Those of us who like to buy the physical game, who like to put it on our shelf or put it on display. Or maybe you're like, you know, Treehouse in the chat. Maybe you like to get them graded. Maybe, you know, there's a lot that people value from having the physical game in their hand. It doesn't invalidate people who prefer to go digital. You know, we're not going to get into the weeds of ownership or anything like that. But it's very encouraging to see a company like Capcom. And listen, when it comes to third-party developers, guys, nobody is thriving more right now. Nobody is thriving more right now than Capcom. So the ball is in Capcom's court to do what they want. They've made a lot of restructuring and a lot of changes over the years, including not only prioritizing console releases, but prioritizing PC releases. And that has been very beneficial for them. I believe companies like Square Enix are going to try and follow their model. And seeing that Capcom is doubling down on physical game sales is a really, really good sign. Because again, they're a third-party developer that's the hot hand in the industry. And if the hot hand in the industry is saying they have no plans to discontinue physical games, then folks like myself or some of you out there, we can lower our shoulders a little bit. This sets a good precedent, especially again, like I've been saying, since Capcom is doing so well. Also, guys, I do want to say we will make time for questions and getting into the chat on the later end of things, just like we do with the podcast. But let's move on to our next topic. So, let's pull this up. I think it's time we watch the Reynatis trailer. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Let's pull this up. Let's pull this up. Okay, perfect. Now, let's put Twilight Town on pause for a little bit here. And let's check this out, man. I mean, look, I'm not completely sold as day one for Reynatis. I'm not saying I can't be convinced. I most certainly can. Maybe this trailer does the trick. But But it does help that, you know, they've got Nomura basically on the press tour for it. All right, let me get my headphones. And again, thank you to all of you who showed up and who are hanging out. Now, without further ado, let's watch this Reynatis trailer. Don't mind the chat, we'll bring you guys back, but just want to give a full view. All right, let's check this out. I have to say, by the way, the character designs are really growing on me. The character designs are really growing on me. Obviously, they're very Nomura inspired, but seeing them a little bit more in action, and we're gonna look at some artwork later too. The character designs are really growing on me for this game. Whoa. 1 second. Let's fix that quality. 1080p 60. There we go.
ここ渋谷区の夜間人口は約22万人。
Can we get some closed captions? No. All right, we'll just have to deal with the
そのうち魔法使いは何人だろう。臨死体験の後に魔力を得た者はレプリカと呼ばれる。
Like again, it literally, no pun intended, looks like The World Ends With You combined with Versus 13. Like it's such a shame. Because you know Nomura would make a game like this if he got the green light.
複製と見下されることもあるけど、私は気にしない。使える魔法は本物だから。俺は桐積マリン、野良魔法使いだ。もっと強くなるために、最強になりたくて俺はここに来た。私たちは魔法。
I gotta say, those helmets are cool, man. You guys know I'm a sucker. I'm always a sucker for that all-seeing eye kind of trope, and I really like the design of this visor. I really like it. It's a little cheesy, but I love it. Also, this little pendant here is pretty cool, too.
機動隊に所属するいわば政府公認の魔法使い忌まわしきルブル。その撲滅のために私は戦っている。
Like, it looks pretty intense. Walking, I guess, hey, nice to see the walking mechanic. We know we love a good walking mechanic here.
それが人を引きつけてやまない。魔法使いは立ち止まったら負けだよ。ひたすら魔法使いの交換。
Yeah, that's what I want to see more of is the combat.
街を守れないね。そして真夏でも冷たい世間の風。 動き続けないと次から次へと奴らが寄ってくる。
Don't tell me.
組織に属さない俺たち野良魔法使いはある意味狩りの獲物。
クジライ様からマリン君を手伝うように言われたの。マリン君の力が必要なの。
Interesting. Actually, let's bring that back a little bit. That was pretty interesting. 1 second. I want to make sure I saw that right. So check it. They all have like casual clothes. And this is new. I don't think I've seen her before, this bunny girl. They all have like casual clothes, and then when it's combat time, they kind of just snap into the battle gear. That's pretty sick. Now a day of Reynatis.
Reynatis.
魔力の源泉である暗き海、マレデウスとの接続が断たれる日、聖杯を持たぬ者は
Oh, we got a holy grail.
その日を境に魔力を失うだろう。
随分際どいことを知っているようだね。ざれ言はつかん。秘密を抱えて。
I have to say, it looks like there's a perfect dodge mechanic with the combat. Like, the game wants you to get some precise dodging down. It reminds me a little bit of, like, the little bit of the combat I'm seeing reminds me a little bit of Final Fantasy 16. Little bit, just the way that they're perfect dodging and maneuvering around attacks. Looks very reminiscent of FF16.
死ね
だからこっちは好き勝手やる大チャンスなわけ。
認めたくはない。私の目が曇っていたようだ。
カイドウ隊長、
Hold on, let's get a shot of those goons.
カイドウ隊長、
Look at those goons.
長くネアにいたがこの組織はもうダメだな。
Oh, dual wield.
憧れの人には近づいちゃいかんのです
So,
よ。
okay, this is cool to see too.
リスクとスリルは俺の大好物だ。最後の時
Because I will say, guys, as much as I love fighting monsters and mechs in video games, there's no better battle than fighting another human. There's no better battle. What's up, Corey Sarakis? And yes, Will, lots of Fabula Nova Crystallis. Lots of it. Inspired, rather.
私はこの聖杯を託す相手を探した。そしてついに見つけた。
俺は俺のためにしか戦わない。
Let us take on the abyss for the sake of the light.
僕は最高のアーティストになりたい。君のために最高のウィザードを描くよ。
その性格、羨ましいわ。
本事件に関しましてメアは逃亡したギルドの魔法使いである通称紬、逃亡を手引きした元メア隊員以上4名の行方を現在鋭意捜索中です。
メアです。両手を上げなさい。
あ、お前
So this is an interesting little crew here. I like that they all have like, and this is what gets me curious about the plot, right? Like they all, when they're not battling, they're all dressing in a way where they have to like conceal their identity. Have you guys noticed that? That the way they're dressing when they're not in battle, like hats covering the eyes, hoods up, like it's a lot about concealing who you are. And I wonder how that's going to play into the story. Or if it's just coincidence.
オールのクジライミチロ？
僕たちが出会った日に家のことを話してくれたよね。あれは全部嘘？
たとえ嘘でもクジライ様に話せば世界は変わる。でももうダメだね。
And the outfits are pretty cool too. But we expected that.
これ以上お前の過去は奪えず時を奪うしかない。
渋谷で何かが起こるってネットがざわついたの。
もう時間がない。あと5日で俺は魔法を失う。
This is one man's machinations. Interesting. Reynatis. Is that? Oh no, we got a little bit more. Got a little bit more. I gotta be honest. I'm getting closer and closer to being day one. I'm getting closer and closer. Not quite there, but I'm feeling it. Dude, the soundtrack. Like Yoko, those of you who don't know, Yoko Shimomura is working on the soundtrack and she is cooking, bro. Do you hear this? Oh. Yes, let's look at this. So this is the battle interface. Okay. Okay, now we're talking. Now we're talking. Okay, so it looks like, yeah, honestly, this is kind of reminding me a little of 16. Little bit. Looks like you could switch between party members up here. It looks like here you'll be able to list some commands for the D-pad and that you're going to fill out your main buttons with certain abilities. Okay. Now on sale. I believe that's going to be... we got more. What? That is a Wild way to cap that off. But that was pretty cool, I gotta say. Again, closer and closer to day one. I think I may want to check out some reviews. And, you know, it's good the game is coming out in the East first, so we could actually look at some gameplay, maybe watch a playthrough from overseas. What a trailer. That's a great trailer. Now, given we weren't able to understand any of the dialogue, but what I did like was that, at least visually, it didn't imply anything that looked too spoilery. You know, it seemed like they played it pretty close to the chest for a lot of details when it comes to the game. But I'm with you, Lance. That was a fantastic trailer. So now, let's move on to our next topic, which is going to keep it on Reynatis. So this is the interview where a lot of the stuff that's coming out about Nomura has been pulling from, where he sat down with the director of Reynatis, who, you know, and again, by the way, guys, everything we go over today, every article, every artwork, every video, there's a link for it in the description. So I'm kind of touching on all of these broadly. If any one of you want to read these articles in full or anything like that, it's available to you in the description. But let's keep it on. Again, something worth noting about Reynatis, it also talked about the gorgeous staff, such as Kazunari Nojima in the scenario, Yoko Shimomura in the music, and Yuso Naoto in the key visuals. A lot of names familiar to Square Enix there. Okay. And then, of course, as we know, you have the World Ends With You collaboration in Reynatis, which is, you know, talking my language. Which, by the way, you know, Nomura made a comment. Let me see if I could find it in here. Let me see if I could find it in here. I may or may not be able to hunt it down, but he made a comment. There we go. There's that translation. About the World Ends With You characters, right? He made a comment about like, oh, I didn't know if I was ever going to see them again or ever see them in a game again. And a lot of people took that as, oh, is World Ends With You dead? And I don't think that's what that implies at all. I think what it implies is the next World Ends With You game probably will have a whole new cast. Because that's what they did, right? The first game had its own cast. The second game had its own cast. Then those two casts collide, but I'm not sure you can do that a third time. I think if you were going to make a third game, you might need a clean slate. But let's see if I could find that particular mention. And there was something else I wanted to touch on. Let's see. So here, one, they asked the director of Reynatis what it is about Nomura's work that he likes or finds amazing. He responded, I like the worldview of fantasy in the modern world. Again, that Versus 13, the direction Kingdom Hearts is headed in, and I was fascinated by the darkness of people and the coolness. I also had various interviews with Mr. Nomura. There was something I had done when I was planning, and some of that amount of heat and creative driving force that I felt hot even in the interview, and I was attracted to it. So, by the way, guys, these are all rough translations, so take everything we're reading here with a grain of salt. Let's see. He's talking about how Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix was like the first thing he played of Nomura's. And yeah, I think that's going to cover for this interview. Again, if you want to read this in full, this whole sit-down interview with Nomura and the director of Reynatis, I got the link in the description for you all. Now, let's move on to some artwork I definitely wanted to show you guys. So for one, check this out. Oh, I don't need to be wearing these anymore. I don't know why I still had them on. If everything, this is huge for the future of World Ends With You. Yeah, I could not agree with you more, Tree. The fact that World Ends With You was even included, I think we should all be thankful, those of us who want a new World Ends With You game. And let's get these tunes rolling again. Move it over to Tuliolal. But anyway, let's keep this morning rolling. All right, so this artwork is absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. Again, you have the two thrones. Again, you definitely have a king and queen motif between these two. You know, you got your little blue ice queen and your little fire king. Although it's probably not limited to those magics. But the artwork is beautiful. The artwork is beautiful, and I'm curious as to the dynamic between these two characters. I'm curious to watch that play out. Now let's check out this. Yeah, we'll switch this up. I think you'll get a better view of this particular artwork. If we flip it over to this view. Then here you have the crossover, where you have, like, The World Ends With You outfits, kind of the crossover. Cool little promotional artwork for the game, which again, I thought was pretty awesome. Sorry, walking down, the Marin is walking up, kind of symbolizes the passing of the throne, in my opinion. Let's take it back. Let's take it back. Interesting. So you're saying he's like ascending to the throne and she's like descending, like coming down. But it's interesting, right? Because his throne is covered in chains. So I wonder if the throne is something that binds him. You know what I mean? Rather, her like stepping down from the throne seems liberating, right? You have these like angel feathers, which in FF7, the white feather can symbolize freedom, depending how you look at it. But that's a very good observation. It's almost as if she's coming down from the throne into freedom, and he's going up into the throne in captivity with seemingly an all-seeing eye in the back watching you. Very interesting. She should look sick. Yeah, the artwork's beautiful. Like, I would have this. I've seen so much artwork come out for Reynatis where I'm like, that would make an incredible poster. Like, if I like the game enough, it might end up on this wall for all we know. But absolute stunning work. Absolute stunning work. Okay. Was that Yozora? No, that wasn't Yozora, but the director of Reynatis says that this game is incredibly heavily influenced by Tetsuya Nomura and his work. But, you know, with that being our flagship topic, let's move back over to Capcom for a bit. This one will do us better. Perfect. So, Capcom finally, and I was wondering when they were going to come out about this with their resurgence, Capcom is considering how to make new Mega Man games on an ongoing basis. So, look, I grew up with Mega Man. Like, Mega Man's one of the first franchises I was ever exposed to. You know, the first game system I ever played was an NES, and Mega Man was a big deal on the NES. And it's been a surprise to me to see Capcom's resurgence in the last few years, as well as they've done, and for them not to sort of resurge the Mega Man IP. I mean, this is a flagship IP in gaming history, right? Mega Man walked so platformers today could run, especially shooters. You know, before you had your first-person shooters, you had side-scrolling shooters like Mega Man. But yeah, it's interesting. Check it out. Mega Man was first released on the NES in '87 and has since had over 50 entries. I didn't know it was that much. 41 million copies is great, but they're selling less than 1 million copies per entry. I actually think I see why they put the halt on Mega Man. Now it's starting to make sense. They needed to create demand for this. Bro, that's crazy. Right, Tree? Chris Hall says, howdy from the West Coast, 4:30 a.m. Dude, thank you for joining us from all the way across this giant landmass we call home. Good morning, Chris. And thanks for joining. Yeah, that actually kind of opened my eyes. It's funny how I just flipped in a matter of minutes where I'm like, how have they not made a new Mega Man? And it's like, oh, there's 50 Mega Man entries, selling less than 1 million copies per entry on average. Now, I'm sure their bigger titles sell a lot more than the more niche titles. But it's starting to make sense to me now. It appears to me Capcom needed to put this IP on ice to get people talking, going, where's Mega Man? Where's Mega Man? And now when they show the next Mega Man mainline game, perhaps it'll create a lot of excitement and hype. You know? Again, I don't even know. I have to be honest. I don't even know what a modern Mega Man game would look like. I think the last Mega Man game I played was on GameCube. There was the Battle Network games on Game Boy Advanced. And then there was like Mega Man X on GameCube that was like a first-person shooter, which was very interesting. I'll never forget that Mega Man Golden amiibo. I actually have no idea what you're talking about, but that sounds insane. I'd love another Mega Man 64 game. Yeah, I would like to. That could be a cool model to build off of. What they made for Mega Man 64 to kind of build off of that for a modern Mega Man game. I think that could be cool. Do you think Nomura will announce KH4 and Missing Link? Not anytime soon. KH4 definitely not anytime soon. Missing Link, to be honest, can pop up any day, but that could also take months. I don't think anybody should expect Missing Link before the fall. Let's just put it that way. Okay, let's mosey on to our next topic. Mega Man's great and all. But we got another trailer I want us to watch. Because this trailer has made quite a discussion. Not only in the fighting game world, but in the gaming world in general. Alright, let's put Tulial on pause. Let's bring this up. So, here is some Tekken DLC, where let me preface this. So, in Tekken, one of the main characters in Tekken is Heihachi Mishima. He is like the flagship mascot. If you leave out Jin and Kazuya, Mishima's probably either third among those two. In fact, Mishima's probably more iconic than Jin. Kazuya might be the only character from Tekken more iconic than Mishima. Now, in Tekken 8, Mishima was pronounced dead, right? And I believe Reyna is his daughter, was introduced. And Reyna is awesome, by the way. She was my main in Tekken 8, which is funny because, and this is why this is causing a bit of a soft controversy, I'll say, is because I never played a whole lot of Tekken. I played a few Tekken games, but because Heihachi was in Soul Calibur 2, Heihachi Mishima was always my main in Tekken. And then to see he wasn't in Tekken 8, it forced me to try out a bunch of new characters, and interestingly enough, I ended up maining Reyna, who adopted his fighting style with, a lot of her own twists. It's the Mishima fighting style. But with today's trailer, it appears Mishima will be coming back. So let's watch this and let's discuss, and I'll let you guys know a little bit of what is being discussed among fighting game fans about this. But it is a really cool trailer. But let's check it out. Tekken 8 is also amazing. Oh, there we go. By the way, Tekken being 30 years old makes me feel so old. I'm 32, so Tekken's almost as old as I am. I'll never forget, my family and I used to drive upstate to visit my uncle, and on the way up there, we'd always stop at this diner. And this diner had a Tekken arcade machine. And me and my brothers would just rip that arcade machine every time we took that family trip. So that's where Tekken rests in my heart, is actually from an arcade cabinet that my brothers and I would go hard on a few times a year. But anyway, let's keep this rolling. Gene. Like, look at this. Dude, they're all training, bro. Look at them. It's a bunch of Mishimas.
Sobre os monges Tekken, eliminando os restos da Mishima Zaibatsu.
They're after the Mishima for that. Also, let me say, the fighting you're seeing in this trailer, there's no exaggeration. That's what the fighting looks like and plays like in Tekken 8. There she is. Oh boy, here we go. They did this so good. There he is. Freaking ripped. I love that. The history. You gotta love it. So, here's the thing. I'm only a year behind you, Landy. That's awesome. Josh C., great to see you, by the way, man. Thanks for dropping in here, brother. You're a year behind me. Good. No wonder we have so much overlap and get along. So check it out, guys. I've seen a lot of discussion, because here's the thing. The director of Tekken, Harada, pretty much swore that Heihachi Mishima was not coming back. Swore he wasn't coming back. Like, over and over. Obviously, he was toying with all of us. Personally, I think that's awesome when a director can kind of not mislead their audience, but kind of play with them a little bit. You know what I mean? I welcome creators like Nomura to do the same. But a lot of people are upset because they feel like this ruins the story. A lot of people are upset because they enjoyed the plot direction Tekken 8 was going in, with Mishima nowhere to be seen. He's presumed dead. All that's left is Mishima's legacy and the fallout from Mishima's legacy. And now Reina Mishima pops up, and she's now the heir to the Mishima legacy. And turns out she's got the devil gene, and she's poised to be the next villain. Excuse me. But here's the thing. And you know what? Let's switch this back up. Let's switch this back up. And we'll pull the trailer up over here. Here's the thing. By the way, swig for all the hardworking men and women at Bandai Namco. Oh, him. Yeah, he's definitely the second flagship character. Right. Second only to Kazuya. And there are a lot of people who feel like this is ruining the story direction Tekken was going in. Now, look, don't get me wrong. I very much enjoyed Tekken's story mode. I did. I don't think it's the highlight of the game, as opposed to Street Fighter 6, where I actually think the campaign is better than the combat itself. That's just my opinion. I really love Street Fighter 6. But Tekken 8, the combat is way better than the campaign, per se. And I enjoyed the story of Tekken 8. But here's the thing, guys. Tekken's story is incredibly silly. Tekken's story is incredibly silly and ridiculous. There's bears and pandas entering fighting tournaments. Like, it's so over the top, silly, and ridiculous. The opening scene of Tekken 8, Jin is riding a motorcycle. He launches off a ramp into the air, and then he throws the motorcycle at a helicopter and knocks the helicopter out of the sky. Like, it's over the top. It's ridiculous. But that doesn't mean it's not enjoyable, and that doesn't mean they don't tell a good story. So I can understand people who, if they really like Tekken 8's story and that direction, Mishima's gone, here's the legacy, here's Reina, she's got the devil gene. I could see how people were really getting excited for something like that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't put too much stock into the consistency of Tekken's plot, I guess is all I'm trying to say. No such thing as a grounded or down-to-earth fighting game. I think that's for the most part, Will, because I do want to talk about that a little bit. I think it's for the most part. The fact of the matter is, while Tekken does tell a good story, especially just like the story between Jin and Kazuya, because that's pretty much what Tekken 8's plot is all about, Jin and Kazuya, and then the mystery of Reina Mishima. But that's how I feel about KH3. That's how I feel about Kingdom Hearts. Like, Kingdom Hearts is very over the top. It can get very crazy and wacky, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But then when the wacky thing happens, like Mishima never being dead, you can't necessarily be shocked. You know what I mean? When Jin can throw a motorcycle at a helicopter and knock it out of the sky, don't be surprised when the guy who we thought was dead is actually alive. Now, me personally, I kind of love this because they were setting up Reina Mishima to be the heir to the Mishima throne, and she's got the devil gene. She unlocked it at the end of Tekken 8. And it's like, okay, she's the new Mishima. But now I'm curious, is there going to be like a civil war within the Mishima clan? Or are they going to unite? You know what I mean? I'm more excited about the questions that this brings to the table of Tekken's story. And again, guys, I'm sorry. He's Heihachi Mishima. Did you really think Tekken was going to put their second flagship character on ice for the rest of time? Absolutely not. They made that mistake when they made Soul Calibur 5. That's why they rebooted the Soul Calibur universe and started over with Soul Calibur 6. Because in Soul Calibur 5, a lot of the legacy cast there was a big time skip. So a lot of the legacy cast was removed and a lot of new characters came in. And a lot of characters that people had fallen in love with, like Taki, people weren't able to play as anymore. And so Soul Calibur 5 to this day is the worst selling Soul Calibur game of all time. Not of all time. Worst selling Soul Calibur numbered title of all time. That said, when it comes to Mishima's return, while I understand those who were excited to see where the story would go without him, personally, I actually think the story is better with him. Especially because Tekken it's one thing if a plot is being like very narrowly focused, serious, like stoic, as realistic as possible. That's one thing. That's never been Tekken's direction. So, personally, I like this move for them. And I'm excited to play as Hayache Mishima again. I really am. I really, really am. Okay. I think I've said everything I've wanted to say about Tekken. So let's get moving on to some of our final topics before we wrap up today. I see we're already at 43 minutes. We are not going to cover everything I wanted to cover today, which I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. Better to have too much than too little. Okay, we actually discussed that already. All right, cool. Let's pull this up. So, turns out, actually, let's put this in full screen. Let's put that in full screen. Actually, yes. Okay, perfect. So this, very well, may be the final form of Viper in Final Fantasy XIV. Ooh, that's loud. Which looks sick. I wasn't going to do Viper, but it does look pretty good. I'm wondering who's going to pick up on it. Oh, that was just a little fun. So with some schedule swapping, this comes to us from Farista J. Final form will be the first Viper stance coming out very soon. I just wanted to show that off. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. So this is an interesting topic. This is an interesting one. Let me blow this up for everybody. Actually, I did want to touch on one thing. Will, when you said no such thing as a grounded or down-to-earth fighting game, that is, for the most part, true. But I guess what I would say is if people are looking for a fighting game story that takes itself more seriously, have you met Soul Calibur? And Soul Calibur can definitely be silly here and there, but if you're looking for something that's a little bit more serious and a little bit more grounded, Soul Calibur's plot can definitely satisfy this, can definitely scratch that itch. All right, I wanted to talk about this. I actually have mixed feelings about it. I was going to totally come down on this take, but the more I've thought about it, the more I'm starting to understand his plight. 1 second, let's get the tunes rolling. Let's get the tunes rolling again. We got to wrap. We got 5 minutes left, and then we're going to wrap up. Okay, let's get the tunes rolling again. Okay, so let me get the chat pulled back up so I can keep up with you guys. All right, Yuji Hori says, as graphics become... I don't need these anymore. I don't know why I keep doing that. As graphics become more realistic, it becomes increasingly difficult to have a silent protagonist. As game graphics evolve and grow increasingly realistic, if you make a protagonist who just stands there, they will look like an idiot. This is a tough one for me, because it's like... I agree there's a difficulty. And even in the N64 era, there was a difficulty in choosing to go the silent protagonist direction. And I do agree as games continue to advance, that hurdle is getting tougher to leap over. But, and again, I've never played a Dragon Quest game, so I can't speak for Dragon Quest. But I can speak for The Legend of Zelda, where, look, no matter how good the graphics get, I don't want Link to talk. I think that ruins the character. At a certain point, and what Dragon Quest has going for it is they have a new hero every game, right? It's not the same hero every game. But Smash is for the people, says Trios. But I think for IPs like Zelda, it's like you're in too deep. You know, you could do things, and like Link might be a silent protagonist, but it's implied that a lot of these silent protagonists do talk. You just have to choose the dialogue for them. But this is interesting. it makes me think that maybe the whole silent protagonist thing is pretty much done for. Again, because they're making that Zelda movie, and Link's definitely going to talk in that. It makes me wonder if this is just the beginning of the end, and if Link is the next one on the chopping block. But who knows? All right, let's move on to a better story, one that I think is amazing. And I don't know if any of you out there ever got into Stardew Valley. I personally absolutely loved it. But let's fly through these last final topics. 12 years on, Stardew Valley creator swears, on the honor of my family name, I will never charge money for a DLC or update for as long as I live. So Concerned Ape, the creator of Stardew Valley, Eric Barone, basically from the beginning has always maintained that he's not going to charge for DLC in Stardew Valley. That all the updates, all the new content will always be free. Now, I'm not so naive as to think that this can set a certain standard within the industry, because you have to remember, the reason, I'm not going to say the reason he's able to do this, but I think one of the reasons that encourages him to do this is, remember, he's an indie developer. Which means Stardew Valley, which when it first released was all made by him. All made by him. I haven't kept up tabs on Concerned Ape and how they've been developing it through all the years, but I'm sure he's got people who help him now. However, when that game first dropped, like, it was just him. And the game sold millions of copies. Millions of copies. Pretty much one developer. So when a game that's charging $20-$30 sells millions of copies, and there's one guy who's going to collect that cash at the end of the day after fees and platforms and all that, you do the math. That guy's life has changed forever. That guy's life has changed forever. And since he got to pocket the loot, it gives him the ability to service his customers in a way that these big production houses don't. And this is why I really think indies are the future. Because this guy created this game, sold millions of copies, completely changed his life, and out of love and respect for his audience, he's continuing to update the game. He's continuing to service the game. Because since he is such a small indie developer, when the game sold millions of copies, it doesn't have to get spread out among a board of directors and administrators and distributors and you get the point. You get the point. Like when Capcom sells millions of copies, that millions of dollars has to get spread out infinitely. And there's even third parties that get roped in that gets spread out to. But when an indie developer like him literally strikes gold, it not only changes the developer's life, now that indie studio can service their customers in ways they haven't before. Stardew Valley, because it sold millions of copies and my man Concerned Ape got to pocket the loop, it's paid for a million times over. 30 million copies. Really? 30 million copies? Do you realize how insane that is for an indie developer? Of course his DLC is free. And I'm not saying that as like I'm not saying that like it's a given. It's an amazing move on his part. It's a humbling move on his part. And I think a lot of other indie developers would be smart to follow suit. Because that structure of not charging for DLC and constantly updating the game has led to more sales. Has led to having a loyal player base. I mean, this guy deserves everything and more for what he's done. And if you guys are sick of getting charged up the wazoo for DLC, indies are the answer for that. Indies are the answer for that. And maybe not every indie developer is going to be as generous as he and perpetually update a game for free with DLC and content forever, but you're going to see much less of the egregious practices that you see going on today. Now, funny enough, there's a follow-up. I'm not criticizing devs who do charge for DLC. So I guess you got a little bit of backlash from that and had to clarify. Okay, we're running out of time here. I'm just going to speed run these final articles. So the Persona 5 game that's only available in China is getting an international release, and Atlus has discussed that post an international release of Persona 5 The Phantom X, they're considering bringing it to consoles if it does well enough. Next one. Let me mix this up for y'all. Not that. This. Turns out Tetsuya Nomura was not in the elevator when the Kingdom Hearts series was pitched. So that story that we've all believed for the last 10, 15, 20 years, that Tetsuya Nomura was in that elevator and gave the elevator pitch, that is not what happened. There was a Square Enix and a Disney employee in the elevator, but neither of them were Nomura. So, now, moving on, I've got one last one. That the anime Fairy Tail is coming back with 100 Years Quest, and the English dub is now streaming. Fairy Tail is one of those animes I always had my eye on. I just started watching it with my wife. We're about 90 episodes in to the original series. It's pretty good. I much prefer the first arc to the second arc. Hopefully the third arc can rope me back in. But turns out Fairy Tail came back, and it's always cool to see a comeback like that. But with that said, we are going to wrap up our first episode of Morning Quest. This was a resounding success. I had an absolutely great time. I hope all of you did as well. Again, this was a lot of fun. It's good to do something different. It's good to talk about things in gaming a little bit more broadly, less narrowly. And yeah, I can only hope this was as fun for me as it was for you guys. We'll be back next week with a whole new set of news, a whole new set of topics. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Happy Friday. Good morning. Good afternoon and good evening to people who may be watching this back. And have a fantastic weekend. I love all of you. Be good out there. Be good to yourselves and each other. And I will see all of you beautiful sickos and normies